Okay, Joe has the mic and I don't have a mic. I'm going to yell really loud. Before we get started, Bruce, Joe has 65 minutes of content and only 60 minutes to get through it. So before we get started though, I need help for next quarter in this class. I need, 1 quarter ago, we did parables. We did 12 weeks of parables 1 semester ago, or 1 quarter ago, and I had a different teacher for each class give their perspective on a parable. And I thought that went really well. I appreciated seeing different vantage points, different teachers give their vantage points. So we're going to try that again in the spring. So starting in March, we're going to do 12 weeks of Jesus's miracles. Jesus's miracles. I need a teacher to volunteer to teach 1 week. So if you're interested, after class, come talk to me and I'll get something started. But that's the idea for next quarter, the miracles of Jesus, 1 teacher, 1 week. All right? Okay, now for Exodus.
Okay. Good morning, good morning. I am so sorry about last week. The snowstorm was actually my fault. I told Travis that if I finished part 5, that church would be canceled, and if I didn't, church would still be on. I finished part 5, and so church was canceled. I'm sorry for the snow. I hope I didn't bust anybody's pipes by finishing this presentation. What Travis said, we have a lot to cover today. Last week, we were just going to talk about the Lord and the Passover. We're going to talk about the Lord is going to pass over his people. He is not going to pass over the Egyptians, and his people will pass through. So got a lot to cover today. There's going to be some reading. We're actually going to read, you're going to listen while I read several different chapters. But the more I studied this, the more I realized this is what we're supposed to do. It's commanded over and over and over again. Every time Moses is talking to the people about it, he says, remember this, remember this. So I think what we're going to do today is what we're supposed to be doing as followers of God. But first, Bible trivia. We get 2 questions this time because we missed last week. So the first question is, which book of the Bible, and if you can't guess this one, maybe you've been in class, I'll go back to this, we're talking about Exodus. Which book of the Bible records the first time that parents are told to teach their children about what God has done for them, and what act of God are the parents to teach about? So I'll give you the first one. Anybody know what the book of the Bible is that this is contained in? Exodus. Very good. Very, very good. What is the act that parents are supposed to teach their children about what God has done? The Passover brought them out of Egypt. A little bit of both of those. That is exactly right. And when your sons say to you, what does this service mean to you? You shall say, it is a Passover sacrifice to the Lord, who stood watch over the houses of Israel's sons in Egypt when he fled Egypt, and our houses he rescued. That is what the first time that parents are commanded to teach their children is about the Passover, and not only what God did to the Egyptians, but what God did for the Israelites. The second question, and I don't know if I've not sung this in church too much, but it's a song that I think we might be singing a lot of. And this might be the only time we're going to talk about it today. So we might want to be looking at this as your homework for next week. What is the first song recorded in the Bible? Sorry for that pun. What is the first song recorded in the Bible that will be sung by those who had conquered the beast? Say again?
Song of Miriam.
Song of Miriam? I think you're exactly right. I think we're going to get both of those. It's the Song of Moses, which is just followed by the Song of Miriam. Listen to this. This is how important this song is and what happened to the Israelite people. Sometimes we think, okay, once we had Jesus, we're going to be singing a new song. Well, Jesus and those who conquered the beast thought we should sing some of the old songs too. This is in Revelation. Then I saw another sign in heaven, great and amazing, 7 angels with 7 plagues, which are the last. For with them the wrath of God is finished. And I saw what appeared to be a sea of glass mingled with fire. and also those who had conquered the beast and its image and the number of its name, standing beside the sea of glass with harps of God in their hands. And they sing the song of Moses, the servant of God, and the song of the Lamb. So this might be required singing for all of us. I don't know if anybody's been memorizing, we got a lot of Church of Christ songs that we like to sing. We might need to add the song of Moses in because we might need to know the words to that. We're all going to be singing that one together. We are still in ancient Egypt. We're going to be up here near the delta of Egypt. And this is where our story is going to open. Where did we end last week with Travis? Oh, by the way, I did watch. Thank you all for saying hi to me. I really appreciate that. Where did we leave off with Travis? What's the last plague? Plague number 9. Where did we leave off the Egyptians? Are they in the light or are they in the... It's okay. It's okay. Where are they? They're in the dark, right? The plague of darkness. The darkness you can feel. The Lord toughened Pharaoh's heart, and he was not willing to send them away. And Pharaoh said to Moses, "Leave me. Beware, do not again see my face, for when you see my face, you shall die." And Moses said, "You have spoken in truth. I will not again see your face." And we actually have a picture of Pharaoh of what he looked like at that time when he said that. That is one of the only pictures we have of Pharaoh. And that's exactly what he looked like when he said that. Moving on to what happens next. So there is this plague of darkness. Moses and the people are living in Goshen. And all of a sudden, this new plague is predicted, but the Israelites begin reaping rewards from the Egyptians before the last plague has even started. It says in 11:1-3, "And the Lord said to Moses, 1 additional plague I will bring on Pharaoh and on Egypt. Speak, pray, or please in the hearing of the people that they borrow or ask, a man from his neighbor and woman from her neighbor, objects of silver and gold. And the Lord made the people favorable in the eyes of the Egyptians, while the man Moses was very important in the land of Egypt, in the eyes of Pharaoh's servants and the people." So they start getting their back pay. They've worked for 400 years for free in slavery. And God has blessed them to be convincing to the Egyptians, to be favorable to the Egyptians, that the Egyptians are just going to be giving them items that belong to the Egyptians. And this gold and silver, it is going to eventually be a source of God's happiness, but it's also going to be a source of man's depravity. What is going to happen with this gold and silver later in Exodus? I heard the golden calf. That's exactly right. That's man's depravity, right? That is man taking over. What else is going to happen with the gold? Why is it going to be a source of God's happiness?
We're going to do the tabernacle.
The tabernacle. The tabernacle. And that I think that tells us a lot about money, right? A lot about things we treasure. If we use them for right, they're going to build the tabernacle. It is God's home, the place that he's going to dwell among his people. And then when man uses it for his own gains, what happens? We get the golden calf, right? So it's a double-edged blessing that the people have to determine what they're going to do with it. Are they going to do what they want to do? Or are they going to do what God wants to do? But it is, I think, very fitting that the tabernacle is built out of Egyptian gold and silver. Very important in the land of Egypt is how it describes Moses. He's very important in the land of Egypt to Pharaoh's servants and the people. This is the same language that we hear about Mordecai and Esther. It says that he was great in the province, that he was great in the king's household. So it's telling, when we think of Mordecai, we think about this wise man, leads Esther, leads the people. Moses is having the same language, and I guess Mordecai is being compared to Moses rather than Moses being compared to Mordecai in Esther. We're moving on in chapter 11, and this is where we're going to do some reading. "And Moses said, 'Thus said the Lord, near midnight, I will go forth among the Egyptians. Every firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who occupies his throne to the firstborn of the slave girl who is at the millstones, and all the firstborn of the animals. There shall be an enormous outcry throughout all the land of Egypt, of which the like has never been, and the like will never be again. But at every one of Israel's sons no dog will snarl, at man or at animal. so that all of you may know that the Lord differentiates between Egypt and Israel. All of your servants will come down to me and bow before me, saying, leave, you and all the people who are at your heels. After that, I will go out. And he, being Moses, and Moses went out from Pharaoh, burning with anger. Didn't Pharaoh just tell Moses that if I see you again, you're going to die? Why is Moses back talking to Pharaoh? What is it? I really don't know. Does anybody have an opinion on that? I sort of have an opinion, but that doesn't mean I know why it actually happened. Why is Moses going back to talk to Pharaoh?
He doesn't fulfill his purpose.
He to fulfill his purpose. Is that what you said? Yes, I think that's exactly right. I don't think that Moses is scared of Pharaoh anymore.
No.
It's going to happen at midnight. At midnight, I think that we are so used to, oh, it happened at midnight. This is significant to these people. This is going to happen at midnight. It's sort of the time of terror, right? The time that Egyptians think that spirits are out. This is going to happen at a time that is going to be significant to the Egyptians. We talk about every firstborn. We sort of just say, oh, every firstborn. Think about that. Every firstborn. Every firstborn. We're parents in this room. We have animals. We have friends. We have family. This is a real curse that Moses is telling him about. And we sometimes just say, yeah, every firstborn.
And even the parents, if I'm a firstborn,
Yes.
he's a firstborn.
Every,
mom.
yes. Every firstborn. Man, animal. It doesn't matter from Pharaoh's house to the slave girl at the millstones. Every firstborn in Egypt is going to suffer. And I think that this goes back to what we were talking about. Why is Moses angry? Why is Moses angry? Is it bad angry? You know, Moses gets in trouble for being angry a couple times. Is this one of the angries that Moses is going to be punished for? Or is this a righteous anger?
It's a righteous anger because Moses knows how grievous it's going to be.
I think that's exactly right. I think, yes, sir.
Doesn't it say every firstborn son, not every firstborn?
So
Verse 5.
in verse 5, let's see. And we are in 11:4 through 8. So my translation has every firstborn.
Translation is this.
This is the translation from Professor Hamilton himself. This is his own translation.
So that's not the ancient manuscripts, that's a personal translation.
It's like Jesus being back and forth.
I don't mean that unkind, I mean, that's his translation.
Correct. And so your translation might say firstborn
That
son.
could be, and the others say every firstborn son.
Okay.
ASP says firstborn.
Yeah, the ESV. So there. I know that has been talked about, that the firstborn sons will be the ones that are redeemed. But at least from Professor Hamilton's perspective, it was not the firstborn sons; it was the firstborn that was going to be killed. So,
Distinction.
yes, it is. But the fact that the ESV also has it, so there are major translations that also would say the firstborn versus firstborn son. But yes, you know, I don't know. That'll be a question that we have to ask. Yes, sir.
I think later, after the plague, the writer of Exodus will make the comment, there was not a household in which someone was not dead.
Yes, correct.
So that may impact whether this is both sons or sons and daughters.
Yes,
But whatever it was, every household.
correct. Correct. So I'm not exactly sure whether it's the firstborn son or the firstborn in general. It's not good. I'll tell you that. I don't think it's like, oh, thank goodness, just the sons. No, I think it's devastating. But I think why Moses is angry is I think that Moses went back to Pharaoh to say, you are about to kill every firstborn or every firstborn son in Egypt if you don't stop. You have to give in. You have to stop. And I think that's why Moses is angry. Moses isn't scared to go back and talk to Pharaoh to try to convince him, please, Pharaoh. This is what God never tells Moses to go and tell Pharaoh that. God tells Moses that there's going to be a Passover. God, we don't have it recorded that God says, and go tell Pharaoh that this last plague is coming. I think that Moses goes and tells Pharaoh because he knows that God is serious and Pharaoh is not taking God seriously. But he just had to leave in anger because he knew that all of these Egyptians, who Moses maybe didn't really care that. I don't know how Moses felt about the Egyptians. That would be a hard thing to know about. But he knows that their death is going to be at Pharaoh's hands if he doesn't stop. And so when he leaves, he is burning with anger. But then God says to him, and the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh will not listen to all of you for the multiplying of my portents in the land of Egypt. Moses and Aaron had done all these portents before Pharaoh, but the Lord had toughened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not send away Israel's sons from his turf. And that's the end of chapter 11. It's one of the shortest chapters in Exodus. And then we are moving into where, before the Passover even takes place, the order and the command of the Passover is going to be given to the people. And the Lord said to Moses and to Aaron in the land of Egypt, this month shall be for you the head of months. It is the head for you of the year's months. Speak to the entire congregation of Israel. On the 10th of this month, let each take for themselves a lamb for the father's house, an unblemished lamb, a yearling male you shall have. From the sheep or from the goats you may take. It shall be for you something to be preserved until the 14th day of this month. The entire congregation of Israel shall slaughter it at twilight. This month shall be for you the head of months. This is going to be the first month in the Israelite calendar. They're going to be observing this calendar. It's a lunar calendar, which is why Easter, which is aligned with Passover, will move throughout the year. But this is significant for the Israelite people. When you're a slave, does it really matter what day it is? Does any day look different? You get up and you go make bricks, and you hope you don't get beaten by the guards, and you go to sleep and you just repeat it again and again and again. The Israelites are going to now have their own time to keep. They are going to be in charge of their own time. They are going to be on their own schedule and on their own calendar. And so God says, time matters now. And the time matters so much that you need to remember this month. Because what I'm going to do this month, and on the 10th day of this month, and on the 14th day of this month, is going to be significant to you. And what this also tells us is, I didn't have the calendar then, I'm going to ask God this, but if God says, today's, this is the first of the month, this is the head of months, I'm assuming that's the first day that God tells Moses that. This is the first of the month. And then 10 days later, you're going to go pick out a yearling male. And then on 4 days after that, you're going to sacrifice that lamb. That means that after Moses has gone to talk to Pharaoh, almost 2 weeks is going to pass before any of this Passover ritual is going to start. So not only does he talk to Pharaoh, they don't go out and just grab the yearling male and do the Passover that night. There is a time where Pharaoh can consider what is going on. Nothing has changed as far as the Israelites' position. They still want to leave Egypt. But now there's almost like a cooling off period where maybe Pharaoh will come to his senses. Maybe this is God saying, I'm going to give Pharaoh a little bit more time. The hardening of the heart, it is complex. I'm not going to sit here and say that I understand it all. But it is significant that there is time between Moses speaking to Pharaoh, telling him that God is going to kill their firstborn, and 2 weeks before the Passover itself will take place. God tells Moses to speak to the entire congregation of Israel. This is congregation or community is the Hebrew word adah. And this is the first time in the Bible that Israel is called a community or a congregation. They're called Israel's sons, the tribes, but this is the first time that they are called a congregation, a body. And what do we think of when we think congregation? A body of worship, right? They are the body of worship for God. So like I just said, we're going to talk about this choosing of a lamb, but it also says you can choose from the goats. That sort of, we think that tradition may have stopped by the time of the New Testament, because we don't hear about kids being baby goats, being part of the sacrifices. So the Passover is going to change by the time we get to the New Testament. But at that time, they could also take from the goats. And when they get into Canaan itself, they can even take from cattle. They can take from cattle, depending on the size of the household, and if multiple families are going to get together for this celebration. And God's continuing to talk to Moses. These are what God is saying the ordinances, as far as the Passover concerned, are going to be. And they shall take from the blood and put it on the two doorposts and on the lintel, on the houses in which they will eat it. And they shall eat the meat on this night fire roasted, along with flatbread together with bitter herbs they shall eat it. You shall not leave any of it until morning. And this is how you shall eat it. Your loins girded, sandals on your feet, your staff in your hand. You shall eat it as quickly as possible. It is a Passover to the Lord. Take from the blood and put it on the two doorposts and on the lintel. We talked about that so much, even since we were kids. It seems like, oh yeah, that's what you do. How strange a command to get, that you're going to sacrifice this yearling lamb. You're going to make sure that you collect the blood enough to get that you can put it on your doorposts and on the lintels. Can you imagine what that must have looked like in the land of Goshen? Of you just have all these people, they're just putting blood on their doorposts and lintels. It had to be a pretty somber, sort of maybe a little bit creepy, scary thing to see thousands of doors just drenched in blood, all in one night. Flatbread together with bitter herbs. The Seder that is now being celebrated by Jews, there are traditions that the bitter herbs mean different things. That is from the Talmud, which are Hebrew holy texts that can be influence their traditions. God doesn't say what the bitter herbs mean. They just said that you're going to be eating bitter herbs when you do this, and that you're going to be ready to go. We hear gird your loins a lot when God is either challenging somebody or when he's telling somebody to prepare to go do something or leave. They would wear robes, and what it meant is you need to roll your robes up so that your legs are free, so that you're not going to be impeded if you're trying to run with your robes on. And I will pass through and this is what God says. So God tells the Israelites, this is what you're going to do. And then God tells Moses, this is what I'm going to do. And I will pass through the land of Egypt on this night, and I will strike down every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from man to animal, and on all of Egypt's gods I will hand down punishments. I am the Lord. And the blood will be a sign for you on the houses in which you are. And when I see the blood, I will stand watch over you. No plague shall become a destroyer among you when I strike throughout the land of Egypt. Okay. It's a little bit scary. It's scary that this is our God talking a little bit to a certain extent. It's a little bit nerve-wracking. And he says right here, he says, I will pass through the land of Egypt on this night. Well, the word Hebrew, where we get that term, is from a word, this ivri, and it means to pass through. It means to pass through. The people are going to pass through the sea. They become the people that pass through, and that makes them Hebrews. So God is almost saying a pun, because Egypt is so scared that God can't do anything to them, and that this God isn't powerful enough to do anything to him. And God tells Moses, I'm going to Hebrew into Egypt. I'm going to pass through Egypt the same way that you're going to pass through the sea. And so the Egypt that was so scared of the Hebrews, I'm going to Hebrew through Egypt when I come. He says that he's going to hand down punishments on Egypt's gods. Well, the hand down punishments, that is the same phrase, the same Hebrew that we see in Micah 6:8. We don't say hand down punishments, right? What does a man or a woman who is walking with God do in Micah 6:8 as far as justice is concerned? Are we handing down punishments, or are we doing justice? And so we say it as handing down punishment. We might think of punishments as being maybe unfair. Well, what God is doing is totally fair. He's not handing down punishments. He is doing justice on the gods of Egypt. And the blood will be a sign for you on the houses in which you are. And when I see the blood, I will stand watch over you. We talk about signs. What's the sign of Abraham? Does anybody remember what the sign? Say circumcision. This is going to be the third sign in the Bible that we have. What's the sign of Noah? The rainbow. The sign of Moses is going to be the blood on the houses. And it's not going to be a sign for God. It's a sign for the Israelites. This is a sign for you. It's a sign for you to know that I am standing watch over you. God doesn't need that. It's a sign for the Israelites to know. Just being Hebrew won't save you. You can't not do this and say, but I'm Hebrew, God. God says, if you are one of my followers, this is what my followers are doing. But it also doesn't say only the Hebrews can do this. And we're going to talk about maybe some other people in Egypt that might have also seen this and saw the Hebrews doing this, and they might have taken that advice. Because it doesn't say, being a Hebrew is not going to save you. If you do this, you will be protected. The Lord is going to stand and watch over you. And we already know from the previous plagues that other Egyptians were encouraging Pharaoh to either listen to Moses, or remember during the hail, they brought their own animals in. They saw that they listened to what Moses did. They brought their own animals in. I don't think that it would be very surprising if the Egyptians are also like, I'm going to maybe do that. It looks pretty strange, but I'm going to do that as well. And so all of this that we're talking about is God preparing his people for what they're going to do. This is all of what God is not worried about the Egyptians. We think that God is up there, he's just got to have this big battle strategy of how he's going to defeat the Egyptians. God is not worried about the Egyptians at all. He's worried about his people and that they are ready for what is coming. And this day shall be for you a remembrance day, and you shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord throughout your generations. As a perpetual statute you shall celebrate it. 7 days you shall eat flat bread. Therefore, on the first day, you shall remove leaven from your houses. And on the first day, a sacred convocation. And on the seventh day, a sacred convocation you shall have. No assigned activity should be carried out on. Only whatever every person is to eat, that alone may be prepared for you. You shall observe the feast of flatbread. For on this very day, I brought you out, your battalions, from the land of Egypt. Our remembrance day you shall celebrate. We are being commanded. We are followers of God. We are being commanded to celebrate the Passover because of God's miraculous redemption of his people for all generations. For all generations. So as I was studying this, I was like, we should be reading this. We should be reading it out and thinking about this all the time. 7 days you shall eat flatbread. Therefore, on the first day you shall remove leaven from your houses. Why? Why do we need to get rid of our old leaven? Why can't we just use that? Why do you think God said, I'm about to kill these firstborn. Y'all need to put blood on your houses. By the way, get rid of your leaven. It seems like that's not as significant as some of the other stuff that is going on. But why is it significant to the Israelites that they remove their old leaven, that they get rid of?
Remove temptation.
Remove temptation? I think so. I think, you put old wine in new wineskins? You get rid, you put new wine in new wineskins. When you leave your old narrow place, remember that's what they called Egypt, their narrow place. Don't bring your old leaven with you. It is time for a new start. Don't let the seeds and the yeast of the Egyptians come into the Israelite community anymore. We are separated from them. And so what we are going to do is we're going to make sure that we get rid of our old leaven. And that was what they would do every year. They would get rid of their old leaven. They would get it out of their houses. For 7 days, they would eat unleavened bread or flat bread. And then they would have new leaven for the rest of the year. And it also says on the first day, a sacred convocation. On the seventh day, no assigned activity should be carried out on them. What day of the week do you think that this is talking about? The Sabbath. The Sabbath is beginning to take on significance for the Israelite people. And by the end of Exodus, in chapter 31, the Sabbath is going to become one of the signs. Like the sign of Moses, the sign of Noah, the sign of Abraham. The Sabbath will be a sign to the people of God's love for them. Moses summoned all the elders of Israel and said to them, so what we read before was God's command. to Moses of what he is supposed to say to the Israelite people. Now we have what Moses, this is what he decides he's going to tell the Israelite people. And it's a little bit different, but I think it's understandable why he talks this way. Moses summoned all the elders of Israel and said to them, "Go pick out for yourselves sheep for your families and slaughter the Passover offering. And you shall take a bundle of hyssop and dip it in the blood which is in the basin. And you shall touch some of the blood to the lintel and to the 2 doorposts from the blood that is in the basin. As for yourselves, none of you shall go out from the door of his house until morning. And the Lord will pass through to plague the Egyptians, and will see the blood on the lintel and on the 2 doorposts. And the Lord will stand watch over the door, and not permit the destroyer to come into your houses to plague you." Moses doesn't mention the bitter herbs. He doesn't mention how fast they need to eat. He takes twice as long as God does to tell them about the blood. Because Moses was taken away from what God told him, and Moses realized without the blood of the lamb, there is no deliverance. And so if I can't remember to tell them to eat fast or to put their sandals on, I'm going to remember to tell them about the blood of the lamb, because without that, they will die. And the Lord will stand watch over the door. That's something that we don't think about God, that God is standing, that God, as he is Hebrewing the Egyptians, that he is then also standing in front of every door that has that blood on it, and he is not letting this destroyer in. Now, this word destroyer, it's a noun form of the verb that is used for the earth of Noah and for Sodom and Gomorrah. What happened to Sodom and Gomorrah, the word destroy is a verb, and they just have made it into a noun here. When the world was flooded and the earth was destroyed under Noah, that is the same word that is being used when Moses said, God is not going to let this into your home. And think about the plight of the righteous in Genesis. Remember in Genesis, what did Noah have to do to get away from the destroyer? He had to build an ark. What about Abraham and Lot and his family in Sodom and Gomorrah? What did they have to do? They had to leave. The plight of the righteous in Genesis is that they have to escape from the destroyer. Noah had to build an ark to escape from the destroyer. Lot and his family had to flee Sodom and Gomorrah to get away. But in Exodus, the destroyer will be all around you, but I, God, will be standing in your door, and he will not touch you. It is different. You don't have to flee Israel and run away from what I'm about to do to the Egyptians, because you are safe where you are in your home, even though just next door, the destroyer is going to be there. It's different, and the security of the Israelites is more whole than maybe Lot would have felt when he's fleeing from Sodom and Gomorrah. And you shall observe this matter as a statute for you and for your sons forever. And when you come into the land that the Lord will give you, as he has said, you shall observe this service. And when your son says, "What does this service mean to you?" you shall say, "It is a Passover sacrifice to the Lord. You should watch over the houses of Israel's sons in Egypt, when he plagued Egypt, and our houses he rescued." The people bowed and worshipped. Israel's sons went and did just as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. They did it. A little bit different tone about what the Israelites are doing than maybe a little bit earlier on, right? They're gonna waver back and forth. And when your son says to you, "What does this service mean to you?" we don't just tell our children what we are doing, but why we are doing it. We tell them what it means. They don't just say, "Oh, you see, son, I'm just putting the lintel and on the 2 doorposts." Why did we do this? Because God is going to rescue us, because God did rescue us when they get to the land of Canaan. Israel's sons went and did just as the Lord had commanded. What a sea change for the Israelites. God gives an order, Moses follows the order, the people follow the order. And when that is in sync, the people are going to be doing really well. They're constantly going to be getting out of that sync through the rest of the Pentateuch. But that is what God's plan is. And this is when it happened. It happened. At midnight, the Lord struck down every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, his sitting on his throne, to the firstborn of the prisoner in the pit house, and all the firstborn of animal. Pharaoh got up at night, he and all his servants and all Egypt, and there was an enormous cry in Egypt, for there was no household in which there was no dead. And he summoned Moses and Aaron at night. He said, "Up, leave my house, or leave my people, you and Israel's sons. Go worship the Lord as you spoke. Also your sheep and cattle take, just as you said, and go and bless also me." It happened. At midnight, the Lord struck down every firstborn in the land of Egypt. This is a story that we've all heard. I would wonder how many hundreds of times, if you combined, how many times we each have heard this. How have y'all pictured this? Honestly, how have y'all pictured this in your mind of this destroyer, this angel of death, this final plague? How have y'all pictured it in y'all's minds? I'll be honest with you. I know it's cold out, so I'll just keep on talking. I always sort of thought it was almost like the Great Reaper that sort of like went door to door, and you would sort of scary movies like where the light comes on in the house, you hear a scream, and then a light comes on in this house, and you hear a scream. That's sort of the way that I pictured it, that it was just sort of this methodical thing. I don't think that's what happened. I think at midnight, the second God said it was going to happen, it happened. And every firstborn or every firstborn son was dead. Boom. Why? Why? Yes, ma'am.
I've always pictured it like war. I mean, when you're in war, everybody's expecting something bad. I mean, if we go back to Hitler's time when it was mass killing and all that stuff. But for this, everything is calm. Everything is good. There's just something that you hear that's going to happen, but there's nothing that it's telling you that it is going to happen. So I think that it was even more powerful because in the calmness and in your secure place, your home, you wake up and everyone
and
they are gone.
They're gone.
And there's not there's not an explanation. It's not they weren't sick, this didn't happen. So I think that it was very, very powerful, the power of God.
Yeah, it doesn't say that there was a thunder strike or that there was a bang or that there was some sort of this happened and then that happened, right? It just boom. Yes, ma'am.
I've always thought too, obviously the Israelites knew this was gonna happen, and I'm sure a lot of the Egyptians knew it was gonna happen. Many of them were waiting up all night, just sitting there going,
Oh, yeah.
"It's gonna happen to us."
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't, as a mother, I couldn't have slept.
No, because our people. Do we really think that blood on a door is going to somehow stop
I mean,
this?
even as an Israelite,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Even as an Israelite, I would be, trust but verify, right? I'm going to trust that you got to say that you're going to do this, but I'm going to wait up until midnight and make sure everybody in my house is okay. And I'm probably like you said, I'm not going to sleep the rest of that night. Yes, sir.
I find it interesting that the New Testament writers, the writer of Hebrews, the writer of Revelation, both of you refer back to this, talking about the establishment of the new covenant.
Yes.
And the tendency there saying, refer back to the Song of Moses, or in chapter 9, the blood.
Yes, the blood of the Lamb of an unblemished male. A lot of the language that we are going to get and attribute to Christ, our King, is going to come from the Passover lamb. Yes, sir.
That, it's interesting, Dave was talking this morning about some churches not true about God, who God. Things like this, when they happen, and they happen all at once, only God
Yes.
could make that happen.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate that as humanity, that many times we have to have something that tragic to drive a belief.
Yes. Yes, sir.
I was gonna say, it also makes me think of as Israel's going through this, they're looking through the lens of they're constantly under empire.
Yeah.
And they're constantly wondering, are we still God's people? We're under that, Babylonians, we're under the Persians, we're under the Greeks, we're under the Romans, whatever, right? And it's the same question, like, who's really in control? And this is answering the question, hey, actually, God is in control, but you have to also demonstrate sacrifice every single time here as a reminder, who's really in control.
Sure.
I think about how did the nation deal with its grief? You know, when in the devastation Job experienced, as he had 3 friends come and encourage him. And they didn't even say anything for a week. They just were present. So what does this nation do to deal with its grief? Is there no one to help us deal with our grief because everyone is suffering? Or because everyone is suffering, do we have the sense of going through this together? First, we don't get that picture, but that's what comes to me. How does this nation deal with this? How does each family deal with this devastation?
Yeah, it just had to be devastating. I just can't, I mean, it will never happen and will never happen again. Why I think it happened all at once, and I think that to our human minds, it takes time to do things, right? So it must have taken door. That God doesn't work on our time. God doesn't need to worry about the way that we would do things. I think the reason, yes, ma'am.
Also, in the New Testament, he says he will come with the blinking of an eye.
Yes.
So the death was swift.
Yes. And you know why I think it was? Because God said it would be. God wasn't going to wait a second past midnight. I am going to give you favor. I'll give you time and time again. And as soon as it strikes midnight, I will not delay a second to fulfill my end of the bargain. You have rejected my bargains. You have even lied about my bargains and betrayed, but I'm not going to wait a second past when I said that I'm going to rescue my people. Yes, sir.
I think we also have to remember that, we think of families as our families being single.
Nuclear families, yes, sir.
Group, but these were usually multiple families.
Sure.
We probably had several people in one house.
I think it's entirely possible. I think it's entirely possible that multiple members of a family, let's be honest, orphans. There's going to be orphans in the land of Egypt. There's going to be just unbelievable sadness for generations. For generations. This isn't something that, in a few years we'll get past this. This is like the Black Plague. We still talk about it today, hundreds and hundreds of years later. This had to affect all of Egyptian just persona, maybe for the rest of the empire. What does Pharaoh say when he calls Moses and Aaron? Now Moses tells the people, stay inside, do not go out till morning. But Moses and Aaron are summoned to Pharaoh's palace in the night. And Pharaoh says, get out of here, take everything with you, but bless also me. Has Pharaoh learned anything? What should bless you? What should Pharaoh actually be asking for? I think he needs to be asking for forgiveness.
Right.
For God, you are the powerful God. I'm sorry. Can you, whatever I need to do, can you reverse this? I think God has the power to do that if he chose to. But Pharaoh still bless me instead of asking for forgiveness.
That's kind of like he was telling God, I know that Moses says that you are the creator, but I'm going to challenge you.
Yes.
Because I am the head of this nation, and I am the one that is in control. So
That's exactly right.
You
That's exactly right. And we're going to see that. We're going to see what Pharaoh really thinks about his decisions in just a moment. Egypt strongly urged the people to hurry to send them away, for they said, all of us are dead. And Israel's sons had done as Moses spoke. They asked from the Egyptians vessels of silver and vessels of gold and garments, and the Lord had granted the people favor in the eyes of the Egypt who lent to them. And they plundered Egypt. And Israel's sons journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 footmen plus dependents. Also, a motley crew went up with them, along with sheep, cattle, and an awful lot of livestock. They baked the dough that they had brought out of Egypt into flatbread cakes, for it had not leavened. Because they had been driven out of Egypt, they were not able to dally around. Also, provisions they did not prepare for themselves. What you were saying earlier, Bruce, all of us are dead. I mean, it's just the trauma We've seen photographs of World War I and World War II in Vietnam where you can see these civilians or soldiers that just have that 1,000-yard stare where they're totally so shell-shocked that they don't even know what is going on. I have to imagine that as the Israelites are preparing to leave, that's what's going on in Egypt. The people that they are encountering are just sort of wandering aimlessly about the streets. And they plundered Egypt. They did the final plague is the people group that you have enslaved. They have taken your firstborn sons, your firstborn, your animals, and now they've plundered you. They plundered you. About 600,000 footmen plus dependents. We're thinking well over 1 million people. Started as a household of 71. We talked in the first chapter about the miraculous growth of Israel. Yeah, it was a miracle of their growth and their numbers that came out of Egypt. And it said, because they had been driven out of Egypt, the Israelites were driven out of Egypt. What's the difference between this and just leaving? What's the difference between saying because the Israelites left Egypt? I think it's another sign of God's power. Egypt, you think you're so powerful? You're going to have to ask me to leave. You can't just push me out, and I'm not just going to leave on my own because you're not in control. I'm not leaving here until I'm ready to leave here. You can ask me to leave, and when I'm finally ready to go, you can drive me out. But I'm not just going to leave on my own. You're not that powerful, Egypt. You're going to have to ask us to leave, and that's what they do.
And also from the Israelites' point of view, we've been driven out. There is no going back.
Yes. Yes, we are not going to return to our narrow places, even though they want to. Even though they want to, we're not going to do it. The stay of Israel's sons that they stayed in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of 430 years, yes, to the exact day, all the Lord's battalions went out from the land of Egypt. A night of watchkeeping was that for the Lord, to bring them out from the land of Egypt. That day, this night, belongs to the Lord, a watchkeeping for all Israel's sons for all their generations. The Lord watched over us for that night, and so now for the rest of our generations, it is going to be a time for us to reflect on what the Lord has done for us. 430 years to the day. I think that it is the same that God said, I'm not going to let it go 1 second past midnight when I'm going to bring you out. I told you, and it says in Abraham's promise that it's going to be 400 years. Scholars don't know why it says 430 versus 400. They think that perhaps there was 30 years of Joseph and his family living in the land of Egypt where they were still in power and still respected. And that 30 years, after that 30 years, the 400 years started when a Pharaoh came to power that did not know Moses, and that to the day they were going to go. The same way God's not going to wait a second to do the Passover. Once he said he is not going to let them or make them stay one more day, that he covenanted with them to stay. Also, a motley crew went up with them. And we're actually going to see, I'm not going to read this, but 43 through 51 in chapter 12 is all about people that want to observe the Passover that are not Israelites and that are not circumcised. I think that there are Egyptians that leave Egypt with them. I think that there are other slave groups. I think there are potentially mercenaries. I think there are people that have married into the Israelite people. And there are just people that saw the power of God and they said, we're going with these people. And so right after the Passover, God is going to take 8 verses to explain for people that want to join Israel and want to celebrate the Passover that are not Hebrews, what they need to do in order to do that. I think it's for this group of people that are coming out with them because they don't know anything about God or circumcision, and they are going to have to learn that if they want to celebrate the Passover with the Israelites. I'm going to fly through chapter 13 as fast as I can, unless y'all want to stay here till 2 o'clock or so, which is totally fine with me. I'm just going to read a few verses from from chapter 13, and this is right after the Exodus. This has just happened, but God is still not worried about the Egyptians. Because God just never worries about the Egyptians. He is worried about his people and that they are understanding that they are protected and that they understand what's going on. And the Lord spoke to Moses saying, sanctify to me every firstborn, the breach of every womb among Israel's sons, from man to animal. It is mine. And you shall this is verse 8 through 10, and you shall tell your son on that day, because this the Lord did for me in my coming out of Egypt. And it shall be for you a sign on your hand and mark between your eyes, so that the Lord's Torah will be in your mouth. For with a strong hand the Lord brought you out of Egypt. And you shall observe this statute at its fixed time once every year. And this is what the father tells to the son, what the parent tells to the child. Because Pharaoh was stubborn about sending us away, the Lord killed every firstborn in the land of Egypt. But every firstborn of my sons I redeem. And so that was why the firstborn was redeemed. The firstborn son was redeemed, because it is the exact opposite of what God did to the Egyptians. And then we're going to see Yahweh's majesty, how he cares for his people. And it happened when Pharaoh sent away the people that God did not lead them by the way of Philistia land, by the land of the Philistines, even though it was near. For God said to himself, lest the people change its mind when they experience battle and return to Egypt. So he's worried about what his people's mindset is. And it says in verse 18, Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had made Israel's sons strongly swear, saying, God will surely take care of you, and you shall take up my bones from this place with you. Remember at the end of Genesis, Joseph makes them swear that, and Moses does not forget his promise.
Right.
Verse 22, and the Lord would go in front of them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them on the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light to go by, day and night. The pillar of cloud would not move an inch by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from before the people. Just a beautiful image that God is right next to his people, an inch from them. Can you just imagine if I was just standing an inch from you the entire time, wherever you went? I was like that. That might be a little bit weird. But when it's God that is doing that, when it's God who's not moving an inch from you, that is in this pillar of cloud or this pillar of fire, scholars think that it was the same pillar that during the day you could not see the fire inside, so it was a cloud. And then as it got darker, you could see the fire inside the pillar. So it wasn't like, oh, it's, pillar of fire's turn, come on over. That it was just sort of this one pillar that you could see the fire in the night. So we're going to zoom in, and I know we're running out of time. I appreciate y'all's patience. So we're going to zoom in into this area right here. And so I'm sorry for the graininess. So it said in there that they didn't go by it's called the Way of the Sea. This area was a very famous trading route. And this is where the Philistines would have lived. They're right here on the sea. Remember, the Philistines come from the sons of Egypt. One of the sons of Egypt is where the Philistines came. And they were allies of the Egyptians. And they were good allies to have for the Egyptians because they're going to be protecting their eastern border, right?
They were descendants of Esau. And if you think about, the whole thing with Esau, who went his own way instead of following God.
We're going to be running into family members all the time. All the time. The in-laws you don't want to see are going to be what we're going to be encountering a lot in Canaan. So God, he's worried to go this way. This is the fastest way to Canaan, right? You just take that all the way, but that's in Philistine land. And so God, he says, he turns them back, and we don't know exactly where, but he turns them back somewhere in here near the Red Sea. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Israel's sons that they turn back or halt and encamp. And then it tells multiple cities, the cities that we don't know the locations of now, unfortunately. But these cities are by the sea. For Pharaoh has said of Israel's sons, trapped are they in the land, barred them in has the desert. And I shall toughen Pharaoh's heart, and he will chase after them. But I shall be glorified through Pharaoh and through all his armed forces, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. And they did so. We're going to keep moving. God uses military strategies. He doesn't just use raw power. And he could, right? He could have just wiped out the Philistines. He could have just wiped out anybody that was in Canaan's way or in Israel's way. He could have just rolled them up in front. But he chooses not to. He avoids the Philistines. That is something that a human would do, right? If I don't want to fight, I'm going to avoid that conflict. I think that he's doing it to protect his people, that he also wants them to know, I'm not just going to do everything for you. I'm not just going to come in and just smash every people group and y'all just get to do whatever you want. This is what Pharaoh has said after what has happened. After what has happened, the devastation that has happened, he is still worried about these Israelites. And now he thinks that he's got them cornered. which is exactly what God wants to do. For Pharaoh has said, trapped are they in land, barred them in has the desert. God says he's going to toughen Pharaoh's heart. Never says that God tells him to say this. God comes to Moses and said, this is what Pharaoh is saying. This is what Pharaoh is saying. This is Pharaoh's own opinion, I think. This is not necessarily God toughening his heart. And he goes on, it was told Egypt's king that the people had fled, and Pharaoh's heart, along with his servants, was changed regarding the people. And they said, what is this we have done, that we have sent away Israel from our service? So once again, it does say that God has changed Pharaoh's heart, but it also says, there's an apostrophe there, and this noun is missing, but it's the servants' hearts have changed too. Even Pharaoh's servants' hearts have changed when it comes to the Israelites. They said first, go, we are all dead. Their opinion has changed now that their slave pool is gone. And the way I have to look at these are evil servants of an evil leader. That Pharaoh is evil. I've studied this. We've all studied this a lot. This is the first time I'm like, Pharaoh is just an evil guy. He is truly evil. And I sort of used to feel bad for him because it's God versus a man, and how are you ever supposed to win that? And it's just so tough. I'm just going to tell you, Pharaoh is evil, and his servants are evil. And so I don't feel near as bad as I used to, just thinking about, it's an unfair fight. That's just not fair. When evil is being smashed, I shouldn't complain about it or feel sad. Pharaoh is an evil leader, and his servants have the same heart as he does. And this is what Pharaoh does after he says this. And what have we done? So he hitched his chariot and his troops. I'm about to be done. I promise. We got a few minutes. So he hitched his chariot and his troops he took with him. He took 600 of the best chariots, indeed all of Egypt's chariots, and those trained in horsemanship over all of it. The Lord toughened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he chased after Israel's sons, while the Israelites were coming out with a high hand. The Egyptians chased after them and caught up with them and camped by the sea. So it says in verse 8 that the Lord toughened Pharaoh's heart. But he only toughens his heart after Pharaoh said the Israelites are trapped. His heart was changed negatively. The hearts of his servants were changed negatively. He asked, along with his servants, what have we done? And then he assembled a military force of troops, all 600 of his chariots and his horsemen. Was there much more toughening that needed to happen? Pharaoh did all these things on his own before God stepped in and said, now I'm going to toughen Pharaoh's heart. I think that the toughness that we talk about might be different than making his heart hard in this sense. What I sort of maybe think is God saying that this time I'm going to make Pharaoh go all the way. Pharaoh's not going to turn back now. Pharaoh's going to do exactly what he wants to do, but he's going to lose maybe any sort of sense of self-preservation that he might have had if I didn't toughen his heart. But Pharaoh was prepared to do pretty much all these things, and all God did for him was sort of give that sort of last little push out the door, and they are now going to be chasing the Israelites. So how much time do I have, Travis? 1 minute. All right. Let's see how we're going to do this. Let's get to. I'm going to cover a few more slides if I can. Just give me just a second because there's some really fun stuff. Pharaoh came closer. The Israelites are greatly afraid. Israel's sons cried out to the Lord, and they said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you took us to die in the desert? What is this you have done to us and bring us out of Egypt? Is not this the very thing we spoke to you about in Egypt, saying, Leave us be that we serve Egypt, for it is better for us to serve Egypt than die in the desert." They still fear Pharaoh. Even the Lord is an inch away from them. The Lord is an inch away from them, but they are still slaves in their minds. And think about when they're saying Egypt, they're saying narrow place. Was it because there were no graves in the narrow place? Leave us be that we serve the narrow place, for it is better for us to serve the narrow place than dying in the desert. That is their real mindset. They are still trapped in their narrow place. And Moses responds the way that God responds to Moses earlier. When Moses criticizes God, God ignores him. And Moses is now learning to be a man of God. How does Moses respond to this? He says, "Do not be afraid. Take your position and see the Lord's salvation that he will do for you today. For just as you see the Egyptians today, you shall not again see them. Not ever. The Lord shall fight for you, and you will simply observe. Now, all that God said to Moses before is, I shall be glorified, and the Egyptians will know that I am Lord. Moses' faith is exploding. Moses is so confident in God that he tells the people, you will just have to observe. And I'm just going to read this last one. And the Lord said to Moses, what are you crying out about to me? Speak to Israel's sons that they continue the journey. As for you, Moses, raise your staff and extend your hand toward the sea and split it in twain, that Israel's sons may come into the midst of the sea on dry land. I used to think that God was critical of Moses when he said this. Like, what are you crying about? I think that he hears what Moses said, and it's sort of like when your dad said, hey, you want to drive the car a little bit? He doesn't tell Moses what's going to happen. I think that he sees Moses' faith and he says, and you, Moses, you go over there and extend your staff and you split that sea in half. And Moses obeys. Moses, who was said, I don't want to go talk to Pharaoh. I'm going to give you 5 times of why I shouldn't go talk to Pharaoh. And God, why are you hurting this people? And Moses, in this instance, the craziest thing that he's ever been ordered to do, he does it immediately. And that is what Moses is becoming, and that's what we are all going to be becoming. I don't have time to finish the rest. I really do appreciate your patience. I'm sorry that I was talking so much. Thank y'all, and have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next week with Travis.